They're saying that he's not a man or a woman, he's not, but that's just the way in which they work.
Because the other option is not using any pronouns at all, only using nouns.
And they don't. Yeah.
But in language, if I keep using nouns without a pronoun, you will see how difficult it gets. That's the reason why we have pronouns. We say he, she, it, they, we, us, rather than just by names, individuals. We resort to now pronouns for a reason. So when pronouns are used, it is not because he's a male gender, for an absolutely says no. So God, now see how it feels if I use this, okay, for the clarity. God is one and only. Because God is one and only, God has to be absolute. If God is one and only and absolute, he cannot be born, because there will be someone else who is born from. Then he will be dependent on someone else. If he also gives birth or produces something, then there's something like God. So if God is one and only and absolute and independent, not born, doesn't give birth, can there be any likeness to God in any way, shape or form? There cannot be. So this concept of God, deeply reflect, your heart and your mind will say, yes, I can accept that. This is how, if I were to believe in God, that's what God should be. That's how God should be like.
Why? As I said, no one really knows for a fact.
Let's address that
what
point.
God is and how
What makes you believe in the Quran?
Okay, so let's address this.
Why can't I believe that this idea of God is not right, and why can't I believe? Because
you have to give your reasons.
I feel like you're not. No, because I feel like you're sometimes you're discounting the impact of the world and all the things that happen in the world on people's opinions.
Give Owen, put an alternative concept of God, and let's discuss this too in comparison to me.
You said it to me. You said God is energy. Do you remember when we spoke? You said I believe God is just an energy around us, and we're just atoms within it. So
yeah, I can't. I don't. That's the thing. I don't have a specific and like, what's the word? Like, haven't decided on a complete idea
intuition,
of what
it's a feeling, and you
yeah.
can like describe it.
But if you were to take,
you were talking before, like you said, if you believe in God, you just feel that that's right. Like this is the right way. You just feel it's in your heart. You don't really have a reason for it, and that's the thing.
you realise you're not far off the Muslim narrative by saying energy. You're not that far off.
Yeah, no.
Let's talk about this energy. This energy. We say God possesses energy, and you say God is energy. Difference at the moment. This energy has to be either conscious, self-aware, or not conscious and not self-aware. That's the two options. If you say this energy is not conscious, not self-aware, then this energy cannot bring about anything, cannot do anything.
I don't think it has. I think like the energy is everything.
Yeah.
Like it's infinity. It's us. It's
Sure.
not conscious. It is conscious. It's like it's everything, and it can't really be
You see,
described.
in our world,
I
changes happen constantly. Transformation from one form to the other. Matter, energy into conversion. One form to the other. How things like, how human beings start from a baby and grow older and older and older, and eventually we die, and that's it. There's a process of change and transformation. This process is either directed, willed, or it just happens by itself through this energy. Either the energy is directing it to happen because it's self-aware, it has a goal or a direction or a plan, or it just happens without it knowing or interfering, it just happens. Now, which one makes more sense is the question. Let me give you an example to illustrate my point. Imagine there is a kitchen where you cook. You cook? Sometimes. Now, so he finds your kitchen, comes to the kitchen, and he sees everything's there. There is a cooker, there is a lighter to light the cooker, gas cooker. There's a fridge, he opens it, there's milk, there's a cupboard on the shelf, and there's tea and tea bags, and there are cups and plates, and there's water in the sink. And he says, okay, I want a cup of tea with, how many sugars do you like? 2 sugars. And he waits there. He waits and he waits. You, the willing agent, the one who transforms, the one who directs, the one who changes, the one who brings about, yeah? You're not there. Okay? You're just watching. He waits and waits and waits. Days goes by, months goes by, years goes by, eons goes by, eons. His tea doesn't get produced. Why so? Because there is no willing agent to will to bring all of this together to make tea. Because a conscious agent needs to will this to happen. He's intending it, he wants it, but there's no one else doing it for you. Because you are the chef, for example, you're the cook, you're not bringing them together, you haven't willed it. This tea will never happen. Doesn't matter, you sit there for infinity. You need a conscious, willing agent to bring all this element. Open the fridge door, bring the milk out, and tap the sink, the water in the kettle, put it in the cooker, light the cooker, the gas flames, boils, bring the tea bags, put it. All of these requires conscious processes by a will. If you believe in an energy which is in control of this universe or not in control of the universe, then without consciousness and will, nothing will happen. It will be like just energy, but no transformation. The fact that we have transformation happening and changes happening tells us that there is a controller, a mover, a director, an organizer. And that's where we say this organizer is what we say God, who possesses, the creator who possesses this energy. Yes, the creator is not without energy, he possesses the energy. He creates. So the difference is subtle, but it's quite important. The energy and the creator, the difference being someone or something that is self-aware, conscious, and has a will. So we say the creator created us with a will for a reason. Our fingerprints testify that we are created for a reason, because it's all unique. If it was just by pure chance and coincidence, 2 fingerprints should be the same by coincidence. We have established forensic science where we use this as evidence. If the fingerprints match, it doesn't match with someone else's because our fingerprints are unique. God actually refers to this. People who reflect and think, do you really think that when you are dead and you're rotten, some people say, when you're dead, that's it? He will not bring you back, he's not going to gather you back together? Just no. Certainly he will. Certainly he will. Even to the very tips of your fingers. Maybe nothing special about it. Maybe there is something special about the tips of your fingers. Okay? God alludes to this point, and we know why, because it's very unique. He will bring you back again to the second life. Yeah? Again. As unique as you were, he can bring you back again, no problem. Because God says, he created you first time, he will create you again. Is it difficult? If he creates you first time, he has all this blueprint. If you make something first time, is it difficult or easier to make something like it again? Easier. That's what God tells us to think. If you're created again, why do you then say that there is no afterlife? When you die and that's it? No. There will be justice. There will be a day of judgment where the bad and the wicked don't get away. They will be accountable for what they have done. And the good people, like yourself, the good people will be rewarded for their good. But the wicked people will have their justice seen. They may be punished for what they have done. Yeah? And this is what justice demands, punishment for the people who have done something evil. Imagine someone who is a serial rapist, killer, child molester, ethnic cleansing, whatever, right? And he gets away, lives like a king, dies like a king.
So
where is the justice?
What do you, how would you, what is the line for that justice, would you say? So you say, like a rapist, is someone that doesn't follow a lot of the stuff in the Quran.
I got 2 questions. So justice means, again, you will be accountable for your actions. The actions have to be told to you first. which ones are acceptable and which ones not. Otherwise, it's meaningless to go and suddenly say, I'm going to punish you for that when you didn't know whether they're acceptable.
So say someone's raised without much of they're raised without parents, they don't have anyone instilling.
To tell them right
telling them right from wrong, instilling a religion like a lot of like good Muslims and good Christians do, and say they sin in their life. How would you say that person will be punished?
God, of course, is ultimately the judge and the arbitrator in terms of settling the dispute, and He is the owner and the master of the day of judgment. He will judge justly. No one will be unjustly treated. That means if an individual, let me give you an extreme. If an individual were somewhere in a
Aborigines or something.
somewhere not, in like an Eskimo individual, there's only a few people, and no prophet and messenger came, and they left. There's no guidance, no book. And the only tools they have is the intellect. They will be only judged as per the use of the intellect. They cannot be judged otherwise, like, oh, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that? Because they didn't even know what to do. Okay? That is why in one of the chapters in the Quran, God clarifies this position. That this is all, it's interesting because this is a question people often have. This is in Surah Al-Mulk. I'll show you this. It's very interesting.
I asked this question when I was 10.
It's like say someone was taught bad, or they were brought up with a father or mother that was someone that was like immoral and didn't really have a good grasp of right and wrong. They're taught wrong their whole life.
So I'm just reading the relevant parts, right? So there are some people who will be deserving to go to a punishment because of their actions and beliefs. So he's describing those individuals. And for those who disbelieved in their Lord, is the punishment of hell, and
Disbelieve. What is that?
they disbelieve, didn't believe.
Don't believe in God.
Disbelieve in the Lord, meaning they didn't believe in the Creator and all His attributes, they didn't believe in the laws or the guidance sent. But it has to be made clear to them. Right? Wretched is the destination. When they are thrown into it, meaning the hellfire, they hear from it a dreadful, inhaling while it boils up. It's like a fire furnace, like they can feel it, hear it. It almost burns with rage. Every time a company is thrown into it, keepers act there. So there are gatekeepers of hellfire. Did there not come to you a warning? So even the gatekeeper tells the people, you are now going to go in hellfire. Did no one warn you about the hellfire? Meaning, did you not have this message? What did they say? Or what they will say? They will say, yes, a warner had come to us, but we denied and said, Allah is the name of God, has not sent down anything. You are not, but in great error. So they will say, yes, there was a prophet or a messenger or a warner, but we didn't believe in them. We denied them. We rejected them. And we said, God doesn't reveal anything. God doesn't send any prophets and messengers. God doesn't send any scripture or any guidance. God doesn't send anything. You are in plain error. A lot of people say that. And they will then say, if only we had been listening or reasoning, we would not be among the companions of the place. If we listened and we heard the prophets and the messengers, or we were reasoning, using our intellect, we would not have ended in this place. This is the role of the intellect God had given us to use. If you use your intellect, you would not worship a tripod. You would not worship a tree. You would not worship a tree or a half elephant and a half man. You would not. Using the intellect properly and in sound way, you would not worship anything of the creation. The only thing that your intellect will tell you that is worthy of worship is nothing except the creator of this universe, this cosmos. If you use this intellect and no prophet and messenger came and you said, there is a God, I submit and surrender, you already have believed in him, and this is your judgment is not going to put you in hellfire, because you have arrived to the right conclusion that there is a creator who is one and only and absolute.
So what it says about where it said, I don't know where it says it, about a disbeliever.
Yeah. So in Islam, a disbeliever is a kafir. Probably heard this word. Oh, you're a kafir. You're a kafir. A kafir linguistically means someone who covers. A farmer is called a kafir. Why? Because they cover the soil with the earth. Knowing the soil is there, knowing the earth is covering. So there's a knowledge involved in this action. A kafir in Islam, in its technical meaning, someone who knows the truth and then rejects it. So the question that we were discussing, if someone doesn't know the truth, you cannot technically say this person is a kafir.
How can you know the truth? Sure, because what you just said, I feel like is a conflicting interest, because you said God will send a prophet to a messenger or prophet to teach you how to live your life, but you also have your own intellect. You said that your intellect is influenced by God, and your intellect is influenced by your beliefs. So the same mind.
Excuse me, are you? She's focusing, so just.
Yeah, no, I can talk to her. Can I talk to you? Yeah. She's got a mind about it.
I thought she was listening, but up to you. The reason I say that, there are some people here in the park, just to introduce you the park dynamics. I come here to tell about Islam and present Islam to people and reason with people with Islam. The lady here, can I finish? Can I finish? You see, she's not even allowing me to speak.
She's got a mind of it. You interrupt into my conversation.
I know,
I can talk to whoever
but I'm just explaining to the lady who choose who she wants to speak to. You choose who you want to speak to. No one's gonna speak to her. But what I'm saying simply, she's a Christian missionary, like we are Islamic. You can call it Muslims who've come here to share the message of Islam. She's here to share.
On the conversation and stop making it about.
My friend, oh, just one
Christian
second.
missionary.
Excuse me. Do you see the problem?
Carry on the conversation.
She is asking a question
No.
very quickly. And
Exactly.
Go and ask and then go. Thank you.
No, I'm going to be here.
Oh, she's going to be here. So that's why I'm saying.
Carry on the.
No. That's what I'm saying. So it is not proper
This is
that while you were listening,
It's great.
she is trying to interrupt this discussion and talk about Christianity. By all means, go ahead, right? But we'll talk about another time. I'm just showing you how, come on, have your own discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just carry on.
Yeah. So Owen. So what I'm saying is,
can I just finish, because I was making a point.
oh, go ahead.
So, I feel like what you're
up to
saying.
you.
I feel like what you're saying there's conflicting interests, because you said about we're talking about God will send a messenger or
Prophet messenger and using the intellect.
and then you also said that our intellect can be influenced by God. And
No. I said we have to use the intellect. The Quran reprimands us for not using the intellect. The Quran says there are people who worship the idols, and those people say, we've seen our forefathers worshipping the idols. And the Quran says, what if your forefathers were wrong? Are you not going to use your sense? They could be wrong too. You can't just simply say, I was born in a family of people who worship a monkey and I'm worshiping a monkey. What happened to your intellect? So God constantly wants us to use the faculty of intellect to revive us in the right thinking. But intellect has its limitation.
you say that the intellect tells us one thing and it's the same forever.
No,
The intellect
a sound intellect would not contradict God's revelation. Like the example we said about God being all knowledgeable.
How do you define a sound intellect?
Yeah. So the sound intellect, give an example of a sound intellect. God is all knowledgeable for all the time. Then he comes down and he's ignorant. The sound intellect will tell you all knowledgeable means all time, all knowledgeable, not 5 minutes ignorant. But if someone says, I'm using the mind, just because the book says so, I'm going to accept it. It's God became ignorant for 33 years or whatever. That's not the use of a sound intellect. Because you are now leaving the use of the intellect, suppressing it, and then subscribing to what a particular book may say. Because you're giving priority to this book and saying, no, this takes priority. Even though your mind does understand that there's a contradiction. Yeah? So sound intellect would not contradict God's true revelation. This is one of the principles that you should go by. Because otherwise, you can believe in anything. Like I half elephant, half monkey God, and say, yeah.
Okay, so my intellect. So my intellect is my understanding of what my intellect is like my logic is.
The faculty of your
yeah,
reason.
yeah. So I'm not a practicing. I don't practice any religion. I'm not a practicing Muslim or anything like that. So does that mean I'm not? I don't know. It doesn't really.
Well, no, what it means is
my intellect tells me that not everything, to not believe everything in these religions. So
your
does
intellect,
that make me a disbeliever, or does that mean
if you use your intellect as you are using it, you would know all of these religious ideas and ideologies cannot be all true. Yeah? So I've already used the intellect. So that means which one is the truth? You need to decipher and filter out. You can use your intellect to filter out, and this was the process that we were showing earlier on in terms of which makes sense or not. Okay? Your intellect will then direct you and saying, oh, this doesn't make sense. God is unknowledgeable, not unknowledgeable. God is like a pervert watching naked women having a bath, and so on. So there is this intellect role that you can clearly use, and then say, look, let me now look at this book. Book is something that God supposedly had sent and revealed through the prophets and messengers to guide us to. How does this book tell me about himself and about everything else, right? Does it tell me that I'm created, I'm already doomed? He's created me and I'm already doomed. I'm already guilty. Imagine, you open a bank account and then the next one they tell you, okay, you're in debt, my friend, £1 million. Just feed the debt into your account. You'd say, how is that? That is unjust. I've just opened a bank account, it should be blank. Yeah, empty. And then I can put my money in, take my money out. But if you're already guilty, like many religions, I don't want to have to name them anyway, there are many religions who say you are already guilty of a crime that you did not commit. You weren't even there. Someone ate the apple, the fruits.
Do you have an example?
No, we're talking about Adam and Eve, the first parents.
Oh yeah.
They were there in a garden, and they, because of their lapse and weakness, being also deceived in addition by Satan, they fall short of the requirements, and they disobeyed an action of God, a command of God. They ate of this tree, and now a religious tradition, a big religious tradition says, you are all guilty, every one of you. You are going to be punished to death unless someone else, like me, God, die for you. Now, I see that, look, this is problematic to the very core, one after the other. Firstly, how can I be guilty of a crime that I didn't commit? I wasn't there. I did not have any involvement. You see, an action has to be done by a willing agent who is also capable. Can you make me guilty for not saving someone being run over by a bus? The only way I can save is having wings and flying over there. How can I be held accountable and guilty and punishable by death because I could not save someone in Brighton? I cannot simply go and fly because I don't have wings or transport myself. So not only that I have to have the will, but I have the capacity and the ability. Eating of the apple, I wasn't there. I didn't intend it to happen. I did not eat it myself. So how can I be guilty of that crime which I didn't commit? That is unjust. It's injustice to the very core. Second point, the only way then I can be saved for a crime that I did not commit, do you know how? It's by the God who created me. He commits suicide. He says, I'm going to kill myself to save you. Even more unjust. God creates you in your weakness where you commit actions which is not up to the standard, and then God saves you by killing himself, punishing himself. Does it make sense to you? That's why I'm saying religious traditions must be used and looked at properly, and then say, look, what is the concept of God? What is the concept of sin and salvation? What is the concept of heaven and hell? Is there justice there, or is it just like everyone goes to heaven? I'm not talking about your belief, or am I talking about your belief? I'm just talking about a religious tradition. Everyone goes to heaven, or everyone goes to hell.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
So, you just said that it's unfair, right, for someone else, other people to go to hell because of other people. Is that what you, as I understand it, you said it's unfair.
I said You should not be punished for someone else's crime.
Right, okay. So is it fair? So according to Islamic tradition, in Sahih Muslim, Christians are going to be put in hell for the sake of Muslims.
You misunderstood. You can open up references like you always do. You misinterpret.
I've got it. It says Christians are going to be sent to hell on behalf of Muslims. It's there. The reference. Okay, I'll read it out.
Let's read and have a look.
Zach said
But even that, if you look at it, how can the Christians go to hell? Because of what? Someone else. Repeat what you just said before you answered.
No, let me read
No, repeat what you just said
on behalf
first.
of the Muslims,
Yeah,
the Christians shall go to hell. You said.
Allah's going to put Christians in hell for the sake of Muslims.
What do you mean sake of? Explain.
Instead of Muslims.
Explain what do you mean instead of.
Are you saying instead of like Muslims that are committed
No,
crimes?
you know what? Let me read it so that I'm not absolutely.
So you've read it, but you don't remember. No problem.
No, I remember it. I'm saying that.
Please,
Let me
please,
read
please.
it for you.
Your text will be clear, right? So I want you to show me a text which has Arabic as well, so I can read the Arabic. Because very often we see here in the park, people have a translation which is also translation doesn't do
I
justice.
didn't translate it.
Translation doesn't do justice to the topic because this is the baggage that we build in what it says. That's why I had to refer to the footnotes when I was chapter 112. This seeking eternal refuge means what? He's perfect, absolute, independent, because that's what the word means in Arabic language. They can't put all there, that's why they put it in the footnote, this is what it means. So even if you had something like this in a hadith, we will check the Arabic and then we can explain it to you what the hadith really means.
It's funny, I watched this all on YouTube and I'm here now. In between.
So while you're finding it, it is not fair to punish someone for someone else's crime. It will be unjust. God says it's not unjust in any way to his worshippers. It doesn't. Because otherwise you will say, look, how can I be punished for someone else's crime? So when we're talking about filtering the religion, look at the concept of God. So when you look at the Quran and it makes sense to you, and the Quran provides you additional evidence for itself, then you can be sure and you can have that conviction. Remember, we're talking about how can I be sure? How can I be sure with certainty that this is it? Because I can't just say otherwise. Absolutely right. If you're not sure, then you cannot say you're wrong, you're this, you're bad. You can't say that. You can only say, once you're absolutely sure that in my understanding of things, I think this is true, based on that, this is not true and this is not correct, this is wrong.
Does the Quran say like if you don't follow Islam, if you don't follow all the beliefs or teachings, does it say you should be punished?
Okay, so Islam says very clearly, Inna Dina inda Allah Islam. Surely the only acceptable religion or way of life is Islam. Is sincere, pure submission to God. Okay? And whoever seeks any other way other than Islam, it will never be accepted of them. Never be accepted of them. That means, according to the Islamic teaching, the only acceptable ideology, way of life, religion, is the one which is sincere, pure, humble submission to the one and only God. If you submit and surrender to something else, it will never be accepted. If you worship a phone or a man or a woman or a football star, whatever, you will never be accepted of it. God is not going to accept this because He created us for a purpose. If you don't fulfill the purpose, then we'll have to meet the consequence.
So, of the Muslim population, you say a lot, a sizable amount of Muslim population are Muslims because their family.
That's most religions.
Yeah,
That's common to most religions. People are born into a family.
Yeah, so I'd say that. So if I'm not brought up in Islamic household, I'm not taught those values growing up. How can I be expected to? And I'm 19 years of age now. I have my own outlook on the world, and they might conflict with some.
It depends now who we're talking about. If it's you, for example, You have the whole world at your doorstep or at your fingertips. You are constantly watching on social media, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever, right? The whole world, information-wise, is at your fingertips. That means that means if you used your intellect, you should have used and said, okay, there are more than 1/4 of the world's population who believes in one God. Why? You ask. They believe in one God, which makes sense to me. They don't believe in 3 in 1 God. They don't believe in multiple gods. They don't believe in idols. So
A lot of people do believe.
no, I'm saying when you yourself were to ask this question, you using your intellect will then coming to a point where you will not have an excuse saying, oh, I didn't know, no one told me, because the information is now bombarded to you from everywhere. No, you came to Speaker's Corner, guess what happened? You came to Speaker's Corner, information came to you. You didn't come to the information came to you from us. Information is always being passed on to us, whether you've been bombarded with information passively or actively. Always.
I understand what you're saying.
But if you was a 90-year-old woman or a man in a home who have no information because she or he doesn't look into the internet or have access to a library, doesn't have a copy of the Quran and so on, it's totally different. Because how much of the information did they have access to? You can only be judged with the information that you've been accessible to yourself. Like we said about the intellect is also there. So if that individual using the intellect realize I can't worship a tree or a monkey or an elephant or a human being, or God is a trinity, whatever, then you already see that these people, day of judgment, they'll be in a positive light. Why? Because they are coming closer to the understanding of God is. That's how much the intellect can arrive to. Your intellect cannot come to the conclusion about that God is this, everything. There's a limitation of intellect. There's a role that intellect can play, but it cannot answer all your questions. Yeah? But intellect can then also, at the same time, reject many of these concepts about God. Yeah? So it might not affirm all of them, but it can reject a lot of those false concepts of God. That's where then when you look at the revelation will confirm your intellectual thinking, intellectual guidance, and then say, yep, I accept, I submit, I surrender. Because you are the only one worthy of worship, no one else. That's why the process of accepting Islam in our tradition, you know what it is? The first one is of negation. You have to negate nothing worthy of worship. La ilaha. Unconditional, that's it. There's nothing worthy of worship. So imagine everything, nothing. Man, woman, tree, flag, nation, pop star, celebrities, nothing worthy of worship. And then you affirm, but the one and only true God. That's the process of accepting Islam. So there is this role where intellect and the guidance plays hand in hand. No wonder God didn't just leave with our intellect only. He sent prophets and messengers.